South Dakota Attorney General Marty Jackley, of course, is running for the U.S. House seat today, and we've asked Mr. Jackley if he would join us to talk a little bit about the overnight news about the Israeli and United States strikes on Iran. Good morning, Mr. Jackley.
Good morning, Dean. How's everybody doing?
Good. Where do we find you today? What part of the state are you in?
I'm in here, so for once I get to actually stay in my own bed and sleep in my own home. So
Oh,
I appreciate that.
yeah, I bet you do, especially at a time like this when you're going about your busy job and plus running for this House seat. Before we get into the issue in Iran, I did want to ask you quickly. News coming out yesterday that Casey Crabtree has dropped out of the race. Your comments on that?
Casey has been a friend for almost a decade. Certainly, I welcomed that support. He's been a leader in South Dakota, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him in the legislative process. But that was good news for our campaign. I mean, he's a welcome addition to our congressional team, and he is somebody that I think as I listen to his supporters and listen to him, I mean, I think it was important for us to gain that support, and I think that just makes it that much stronger as we move forward in the season.
I know you'll never say that it seals the deal, but is that a development that puts you in a really strong position to close out the primary in June?
It really does. I mean, you know, you guys raised me West River. I know that I got to keep working, and I'm doing that. But having Casey's support meant a lot to me, and I think having his supporters hear that from him was very important, and it was a good development as we move forward.
So, one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on here this morning, the primary reason is to talk a little bit about the overnight news that the United States and Israel have attacked Iran. Iran is now doing some retaliatory strikes, namely on Israel. And just wanted to get your take on the overall situation.
Certainly, initial reports have been that Operation Epic Fury became necessary. We've been in ongoing, you know, peaceful talks with them. Those had not, reached a point where we felt safe, and ultimately President Trump, as he advised Congress to, felt we needed to move forward on a preemptive military strike. Israel certainly has had the United States' support. We recognize how important of an ally Israel is, and Iran's continued nuclear ambition, along with the support of terrorism, just isn't acceptable. And so hopefully this operation continues successfully. I mean, we have to keep the men and women in our military in our prayers and our thoughts. I mean, they are in harm's way. There's talk of those retaliatory attacks by Iran. And, again, that I think it speaks to the United States military strength as we've been a part of this operation. And I think it's important to keep in mind what's happening is this is a short-term answer to the immediate threat that Iran is posing. There's ongoing conflict that's going to need to be addressed, hopefully with the regime change. And part of that will depend upon the continued success of this operation.
This looks like a pretty large scale attack and an ongoing attack that may continue over several days. The president, in his remarks overnight, Marty set the bar pretty high, nearly setting it at regime change. Is that a pretty high marker to put out there?
It is a high mark, but I feel it's necessary because of the ongoing, terrorism threats, the nuclear ambition, for there to bring a level of stability in Iran, it's going to take a regime change. And I think this gives the opportunity for that. I mean, for military strikes, they've been successful at this point, but for the long-term look at the stability of that region, there needs to be new leadership.
The president indicated that the people of Iran should stand up against the regime as well. I think everyone would agree that the regime is not popular in Iran. Iran is a country with a lot of young people that are very much opposed to the regime. On the other hand, given the brutal tactics of the regime, standing up to them if you're in country, easier said than done, yes?
Yeah, it's dangerous. I mean, but certainly I think this operation now presents them the opportunity. I think they're seeing that Israel and the United States want a regime change. I think that this will help with that. But at the end of the day, I mean, the people of Iran have to stand up and put in the leadership they need moving forward.
When you, I think it probably goes back to every president in history that's taken any military action, whichever party's in power, the other party says that Congress was ill-informed of the efforts, and that's happened again in this case. Comments on that?
Certainly I want to be South Dakota's voice in Congress, but also recognizing that for a successful operation, it isn't practical to meet with 435 uh, leaders from various states. Sometimes you have to act quickly. You've got to have a level of secrecy to that. From all accounts, the president has debriefed both Republicans and Democrats on intelligence. He continues to have those ongoing conversations. Speaker Johnson indicated they have been informed, and I respect that. Again, if South Dakota blesses me to be the congressional voice, certainly I think it's important that we be debriefed when it makes sense. But again, when you need to take immediate military action and there needs to be a level of secrecy to that, I think that's important to keep our men and women in uniform safe. And I think it's important for the success of the operation. So I recognize that Democrats would like more information, but I, as a Republican, respect that there'll come a time, maybe when I'm serving in Congress, a Democrat president have to take action. And, I feel my job is to get as much information as I can, but not get in the way of a successful operation.
One of the things the president also said overnight was that Iran had a process underway which could result in missiles that could reach the United States. Some experts interviewed this morning seem to dispute that, or at least feel that something like that would be years away and not an imminent threat. Do you have any thoughts on that, one way or the other?
You know, an opportunity as Attorney General to travel to Israel, to be in debriefings of the military as Attorney General. And, I think there's been an overall concern of both Israel and the United States that Iran does have a sustained nuclear ambition, where their technologies reached can be challenging figuring out because obviously they're not letting us look at all their developments. And so I think it's the real concern. We don't want that to happen. They have not been good about their communication and being open about that. And so I think we have to do everything we can to make sure they don't get those nuclear or missile capabilities, because that would be, detrimental to certainly America's safety. And it's been an ongoing issue for Israel's safety. And so I'm a strong believer that we need to stop that nuclear ambition. And unfortunately, peaceful diplomacy has not worked with Iran, and they've left us little choice but to seek a military option to make sure they don't reach that capability and put our citizens at risk.
So there's an ongoing and what appears to be fairly major military effort that could go on for some time. What do you see as available off ramps for the regime, if any?
Yeah, I think, right now, the key is this operation, needs to be successful. We're certainly engaged with Israel to make sure that it is successful. And then I think the real off ramp is a regime change. I think if you want stability in that region, you want to address our concerns about that sustained nuclear ambition. We need to address the ongoing support Iran has given to terrorism, and I think those need to be keys as we move forward. And again, it goes back to the best off ramp for everybody would be a regime change, and to be able to build that up, address those concerns of nuclear ambition and, the support of terrorism. And that's going to need a regime. I don't see that happening with the current regime.
The president has said that he expects a total annihilation of the Iranian missile system, an annihilation of the Iranian Navy, and is looking for a regime change. So, I mean, those are all real high marks.
Those are high marks, but I mean, for the safety of Israel, the safety of the United States, I think that's achievable with our military strength. And, I support the president in trying to, address militarily those concerns. And, at this point, it seems a successful operation. Of course, there likely will be retaliation, and we'll have to see how the operation continues, which is why it's important to keep the men and women in uniform that are defending the United States, defending Israel in our minds and in our prayers. And hopefully this this is a successful operation where we take out their military capability and we begin the process of the regime change so that everybody's safer.
So, in sum, is the only reason should we expect this military operations will continue until there is a regime change? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball either, but is that what we're saying here?
Well, certainly Operation Fury is a temporary solution, is to take out their military strength to keep us safer. But the long-term conflict, the current regime does not want to have peaceful talks, want to continue that nuclear ambition. So if there's not a regime change, Operation Fury may change, but there'll be continued conflict. And the only way to stop that conflict is a regime change, in my opinion.
Couple. I know I didn't identify this as something we would go into today, but just a couple real quick questions off the topic entirely. I'm back here in South Dakota as we move towards the latter stages of the session in Pierre. What are your comments on what's going on there and bills you've been involved in, and just sort of a quick summary of where things stand from your office?
From the Attorney General standpoint, this has been a good session for South Dakota's public safety. As Attorney General, I brought 10 bills, most of them focused directly on public safety, protecting kids, addressing human trafficking, election integrity, and then transparency of government. The transparency bills, there were 3 bills. Those have already gone through. I think only one of my bills has had a no vote, which means Republicans and Democrats together have said public safety is important. Monday morning, I start bright and early at 7:45 in state affairs on election integrity to try to keep foreign national money out of our elections here in South Dakota. It's a good bill. And then we move on to judiciary at 10 o'clock, where I'll be talking about what we need to do to protect kids, to put some age limitations on that Delta 9 drug that right now a 12-year-old can go purchase. We need to put protections in like we do with alcohol, tobacco, other dangerous drugs like Delta 8. That's good legislation. We've had, as an electrical engineer, I love AI. I think, many people in South Dakota benefit from it, from education, but we've had some, public safety challenges where AI has been used against kids in the pornographic setting. And we've had a bad case up in Aberdeen where, an unconsenting adult had their pictures put into a sexual scene, which is, I think it's disheartening, and I think we need to address it. And the South Dakota legislature is addressing that, along with drugs in the prison. Last year alone, I had 8 overdose deaths that I investigated. I think 4 under indictment right now. We need to get those drugs out of the prison, and I think we've got a good solution to that. And that bill will be up on Monday, and we'll have a good conversation. All these bills have already gone through the Senate side, and now we're just moving them through the House side to make South Dakota safer.
And then last question, what's ahead for the campaign over the next couple of weeks?
I'm not going to stop working. Obviously, I'm busy during session, which keeps me in Pierre working with the legislature and the governor. And once session's over, I'm going to begin crisscrossing the state. I've got events in Yankton, in Rapid City. We're going to be traveling to Sioux Falls, just all across the state. And I'm just going to keep listening to the voters of South Dakota, what they want to see in their congressional voice, and to keep working to make sure that, the election goes in the right direction. It appears now that my focus may transition a little bit to the general election in November, but it's the same type of work. It's getting out in South Dakota, hearing what people want from their voice in Congress, and meeting as many people as I can, and just simply outworking the other side.
Marty Jackley is the Attorney General of South Dakota. A.G. Jackley, thank you for your time.